Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another stream. Hope you're all having a good night tonight. Hope you're ready for some fun games of TFT. Last night's stream was absolutely incredible. We ended up having a pretty hilarious time in our games where we ended up having a fun 4th place with getting a bunch of sets for Draconic Brawlers. Unfortunately, we didn't get the best 3rd item for set, but we'll still take a 4th. We then had an outrageously close game that we could have placed 4th, 3rd, or even 2nd, getting a Cavalier brand and doing a reroll at level 7 that we ended up staying at that level all the way through until a very late game where our opponents were level 9, and even still we were winning rounds and we were about 2 health off from making it into anywhere 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. And we ended off our night with a hard pivot from attempting to Aphelios and ended up going for a Legionnaire Draven that we ended up splashing in the 3 Forgotten to power him up with 2 shadow items, the 2 Mystic that came along with it, since we were able to also run the 2 Dragon Slayers and some Nightbringers. Moving into tonight, we're really excited for whatever we end up finding. But I know just before we get started, there is a pass that is just released for the project skins in regular League of Legends. Now, I know you don't all know about me here, but I'm a huge fan of League of Legends in itself. So what I'm going to end up doing, especially considering we're going to be playing so much TFT, is I want to make sure that I buy the pass, because you start earning a bunch of extra coins while you're playing, and to me it just seems like the best thing to get. So with that out of the way, I think we're good to get started with tonight's stream. I hope it'll be a good night. Really, only time will tell. But I'm happy to have you all along for the ride. Let's get started. Bit of a longer queue time tonight, but that's no problem. I believe we're looking at an all-diamond lobby. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be potentially a little bit of an uphill battle for us, as we don't necessarily go for the strongest units or objectively best things in the game. But we'll have to see what we can come up with in this game. I know, realistically speaking, it's not always the best to just go for a Draconic start, but I'm a huge fan of the set 3 build. I feel it just fits my playstyle pretty well, and I love seeing all those combines. Considering we have a 6 gold start here, it may end up turning into an early lobby that we can start getting some economy, even though it may mean that we're taking a bit of a loss at the start. In the rare event that we get any more gold, we definitely need to make sure to maximize our economy, but we're hopeful that we don't. Yeah, for some reason the screen switcher isn't really going right away, and I'm sorry about that, but thank you for calling it out not tonight. I would not have noticed until far too late into the stream. And welcome again. Let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I could look to sell my whole bench here and start getting some economy going. Realistically though, I would have rather put in the Udyr, but I think just having the 3 Hellions for now is a decently strong play. I definitely don't plan to win this. Since I'm not looking to win on that first round, I'm just going to buy out the shop. It really opens up my options to potentially go Forgotten. Especially considering I've gotten a sword now so that I can go a Bloodthirster. We could look to go Draven as a potential carry. I do think in the immediate that 3 Forgotten will be stronger than the Hellions. And I'm sorry to let you down, but I don't think this is a Teemo game. So I think what we want to do here is we want to put in the 2 Brawlers for a stronger front line. What I will also do is I'm just going to buy pretty much the whole shop here. Just because there's a chance that I can end up getting a Thresh, and then Leona would actually be a much better addition to the team over someone like the Warwick with the Gragas. I believe we should win this round. It should be a little close thanks to Guardian Angel, but we should be able to take it home unless the time ticks over. Yeah, unless the time ticked over exactly when Ziggs would throw a bomb in our vein, but we're good. So here we're getting towards the reason why I kept an Udyr, because now that we found a Zyra, all we're missing is a Set or an Ashe, and we can get started on working on our composition that is a personal favorite and one that's near and dear to my heart. Brawler set. We also have a Bloodthirster and magic resistance for him, so it's looking like it could potentially be a valid option for our game. We just want to make sure we grab at least one more sword, or maybe a shadow magic resistance, as we know we're going to need it. So going into Carousel, we see a crit glove that we'd like, we see a sword that we'd like. We'd be happy with either, so we'll have to see what we're able to get here. Unfortunately, we don't end up with either, so I'm not really sure what the next best option to take would be. I'm going to end up going with the Shadow Magic Resist here, because that could still turn into the Refracted Dragon's Claw, which is 15% magic resistance and the immunity to the critical hits. That also leaves us with multiple Abominations that we could just potentially run in the immediate if we find a brand. I also think, in terms of just going for most powerful board and getting to level 5, what we're going to look to do is we're actually just going to look to sell all of those spare units, and then we can go to level 5 and we can put in Nunu and the Warwick. Unfortunately, it's getting towards the point that we may need to give up on the set dream, but we'll have to see. We don't need to give up quite this soon. But we're really happy because we end up finding Brand, which means that for now, we can just look to play strongest board, which is Spellweavers, Brawlers, and our Abomination. And we're happy to put the Refracted Dragon's Claw on that Abomination Nunu for now, as we know we'll eventually end up remaking him if we find the set. But we're reaching that end point. So it's looking like that change out was strong enough for us to be able to win. And we get lucky finding the set at the very last round that we could have looked to find him. That does mean that we're going to look to get to level 6 fairly aggressively, as we will have 4 Brawlers as well as 3 Draconic, which is probably the strongest point we could look to be. If we get any gold here, we can keep Callista. If not, we'll look to sell her. Perfect, so now we look to swap out our units, get in our very tanky 4 Brawler setup, and start looking to itemize our set as our main carry. We can sell these units soon, knowing that we're not really going to run them and that we can start earning our dragon eggs, but finding a spatula is really, really powerful for our composition here. I want to make sure, if possible, we could use this spatula for something like Dawnbringer to make another one of our tanks very durable. But first and foremost, we need to find a 3rd item per set, knowing that once we find another Nunu, we're going to take that Dragon's Claw off of him and end up giving it to Set to make him much more survivable from the magic damage that we constantly find throughout our games. I think we're good to take the sparring gloves here, as that could make an infinity edge for Set, which would be a great third item, regular or shadow infinity edge. We're also just looking to sit on our gold here as we work our way up to 50, and we'll be slow rolling our gold beyond that at level 6 to try to get 2 stars on the Warwick potentially, but definitely to start looking for our sets that we need. So not tonight. How's the day going for you? How's the week been? Hopefully things have been okay, maybe on the up and up, heading towards the weekend. I can definitely understand that. I'm also really looking forward to the weekend. It should be a nice time to relax and enjoy. In the event that we don't grab a sword here, we could just use the tier to make a Hand of Justice on Set, which is a fine third item. What you doing this weekend? Lol. Well, I never stream on the weekends, so I figured that I'm just gonna spend some time with family, friends, girlfriend, you know, just have a nice and enjoyable weekend. Unfortunately, because this person's running 4 Brawlers plus Abomination, we're probably going to take a loss here, considering their Nunu is 2-star plus has a Zizirot. With that in mind, we have to know that we're contested, so as soon as we get to level 50, we're definitely going to be rolling any spare gold over 50 to specifically find ourselves set. Going into Carousel though, there is an Ivory with a sword, which we would love to grab, as that would be probably the perfect item for us for our set. Realistically, we're so high up on pick, it's unlikely we'll get it, so in the event we can't get that, we may look to grab the Shadow Crit Glove here, or some ability power. Perfect, we do end up grabbing the Ivern with the sword. I don't believe we'll keep the Ivern, even though he's a unit we'd want to put in at level 8, just because we want to try to get our gold as high as possible, so that we have the chances of finding our stronger units and start looking for sets as soon as possible. Perfect. So now we get the Infinity Edge to put on Set, and he's already starting to look very, very scary. I'm still not sold on what I would want to make the spatula into, so for now we can leave it in the event that it could potentially turn into a force of nature for us. So thankfully Set's survivability is looking pretty good. Unfortunately, because we have him at 1 star, his damage just isn't there yet. So our opponent's really high rolled here with a very early Heimerdinger. So we'll have to be careful for them as the game goes on. I believe the correct play is just to grab the Giant's Belt, because it's possible that it could turn into any particularly powerful item on Nunu. For example, Warmogs, even the Sunfire, Zizarot Portal, any of them would be good. Fortunately, we're taking very close losses, so we're actually retaining a reasonably high health pool as we start to get into the mid to what would almost be considered the late game, which will happen in like round 5-1. Perfect, so we're still finding our sets. We're a little bit behind on time, but that's to be expected on finding our Draconic so late in stage 2. It looks like we should end our loss streak here, which is fine. Not the best thing considering we were at about 5 losses, but we're still feeling pretty good about everything. Going into Carousel, we'd love to grab a defensive item for Nunu, like another armor, another health. We'd really love that armor particularly because that would give us a Volibear, which would be very powerful that we could just replace Warwick outright. We are very confident that's not going to happen, so we're still happy to end up grabbing either the sword or the health, and I think we're going to end up just taking the health here. Yeah, top 4 for now. The game's definitely not over yet. Mind you, that helps immensely. Just completely finding set 3-star there is a huge pickup for us and makes us feel confident that next level we can use the rest of our money to just look to go to level 7, and we'll be staying at level 7 for a little while just because we'll be working our way up to level 8, and ideally we'd love to try to get either of Ashe or Zyra to 3 stars. But again, that's to be seen. As far as it goes for what unit we'd want to put in at level 7, since we already have the Spellweavers, if we do end up finding a Kindred, that could be really good just to get another Ranger in, as that will really help Ashe in getting her casts off consistently. I just beat the person in first place. So here, even though we drop below 50 gold, we can still stay above 40, and we can look to put in another unit. I'm not exactly sure what unit. I know I'm running out of time. So for now, we'll just throw in Rise, knowing that he's a fairly strong option. I don't think I'm going to keep this Gragas just because unlike the Zyras, unlike the Ashe, it's not likely that I'll continue to be seeing Gragas as it's 19% and will only be getting lower. So we'll sell the Gragas to get over the 40 gold, and we're really looking forward to seeing what we're able to find with the Raptors on 4-7 as our one punch set absolutely deletes his backline. And as you can tell by the damage graphs, he is our main threat. Unfortunately, we end up knocking out an opponent, but fortunately for us, it kind of puts us in a pretty good position. Seeing that there's a 1% Kale in shop makes me want to grab it just to deny other people. I know it sounds a little bit rude, but I am going to grab it because that also will be an extra Verdant unit to potentially keep our Ashe a little bit safer, as we don't really have a lot we want to put in right now. Especially considering we end up getting back up to 50 gold anyway, there's no real downside to grabbing the Kale and just putting it in. As we find ourselves about 30 to 40 gold off from level 8, we do know we can go level 8 next round. Once we go level 8, what we'll do is we'll start looking for Kindred in our second Ranger, and then we'll look to take out the Kale and put in Ivern, and then Volibear would replace Warwick, giving us a much more durable Revenant frontline. Ironically, I don't actually think Kale is awful here, just by nature that we've bought so much time with our brawlers that she can start doing some damage. I just think that without having a Ginsu's on her, she's really not going to be much of a threat to the opponent composition. So we barely end up losing that round, but it really shows that Kale without items is not very powerful anymore. Since we find the Varus in the shop, we can look to just level here and go to level 8 and just put in Varus as he stands. We can also potentially look to take out Kale, knowing that we do have a better 5-cost unit in Viego, and we have an Ivern ready for whenever we find Volibear. So I will sell this Kale to get to 20 gold, but only if we end up losing this round, because if we win, we'll be at 20 anyway, and it denies her from our opponents for as long as possible. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to put the tier on the Ashe to give her blue buff. And for next round, I'm actually going to make the Shroud of Stillness on the Varus, or I might make it on the Warwick. I'm not exactly sure who I'd rather have it on. I probably would say the Varus because he's easier to move around across the backline, just because it'll give us a much more solid way to stun their team with moving him around more flexibly. In terms of the most powerful 5-cost we can put in, Darius does end up doing a good amount of armor shred, but I still think Viego's pretty strong as he'll look to steal units from the backline. So I think we'll keep Viego in over the Darius, and again, if we lose, we'll just sell the Kale to get above the 30 gold. As all we really want to do here, since we're at such a good position, is just make sure that we can end up rolling for Zyra and potentially Ashe, as well as looking to find Volibear later. Thankfully, with our 3-star set, we aren't really having any problems thanks to him being fully itemized and guaranteed critting the opponents. Going into carousel here, we love that there's units like Zyra, but we don't really want the locket on her. So I believe what we're going to end up grabbing is... Okay, I was going to say the Guardian Angel on Vel'Koz, but with that out of the way, I am going to grab the locket, because what I can look to do is I can look to position the Zyra on the corner and bring Ashe slightly further in and give my backline units a bit more of a shield. Okay, this is one of those just hit moments, and I say that because we found 2 kindreds. I'm going to make that perfectly clear. That is not something that is very common. To find 2 of the same 5 cost in a shop. Unfortunately, on our roll down there, we didn't end up finding our Volibear or another kindred, so we'll just leave our units in as we have them for now. Our opponent's looking to get a Vel'Koz 3-star, which will end up beating us in the game if we don't defeat him here. So we'll have to see what we're able to do. Thankfully, our set is itemized to deal with large amounts of magic damage, and we have Viego to just tear apart the opposing team. So we'll have to see if we're strong enough. And I believe we are, but I don't think we're strong enough quite to knock our opponent out here. Yeah, our opponent managed to stay alive at 7 health, making a very, very close top 5. We're very happy to hit that Zyra, as it means that we'll have a much stronger positioning and defenses looking into the next round. Just unfortunate that we don't end up finding Kindred or Volibear there. So thankfully, Set's able to dodge the Abomination and completely clean up our opponent's backline here. I'm not sure if he'll be able to beat the Abomination itself, but I do think that we'll be fine, and we should come away with a win on the round. Wonderful. Perfect, so we do end up finding the Ashe, and there is a second locket that we can put on Zyra, making whatever backline units we want to stack in these corners extremely healthy by comparison to what they would normally have, because each locket's going to give 400 extra shield. So that's a total of 800 bonus health that we'll have on our units there. I think one of my favorite interactions is Viego stealing the dragon, because he just gets a giant crown.
Time has come. Ready or not. Danger is coming.
So unfortunately, we still haven't been able to find ourselves a Volibear. Fortunately, however, it hasn't really hurt us, seeing as we're in such a good spot in terms of our board and our composition. So you can see that Viego only has 1,000 health, but he basically got almost his entire health bar refilled, which bought him quite a bit of time there. Unfortunately, I do believe we'll lose this, but it will be close. Yeah, just the knockups from the Ivern were too much for our team to handle there. Even with the Shadow Dragon's Claw, which makes us immune to the bonus damage from critical hits that the assassins have innately. Thankfully, however, we're confirmed top 4, and we're feeling pretty good about it. I'm not sure if it's correct to sell Ivern here. So what I'm actually going to do is just sell Viego and end up running the composition something like this, so that all we're waiting on is the oh wow, our set just got destroyed. All we're waiting on is the potential of a Volibear. Unfortunately, it's looking like we're going to end up at the 4th place for the game, but without finding Volibear, it's to be expected as we're not able to break through our opponent's shields. The fact that we do still end up in a top 4 position is pretty good for us here. We're happy. We're happy with that position even. Just hedging our bets as 2 of our opponents have their units stacked to this side. We want to make sure that we can hit our shroud on some of their core units, and so we do. Once again, I'm not sure if we'll be able to survive this round, just by the nature of their composition and Set not being in the right spot. But if Set's able to get off his punch on the opposing backline, I think we'll be in a good spot. Unfortunately, without a Volibear here, we're going to look for an item for Zyra. I'm not exactly sure what that will end up being, but I think the Caustic Death Cap is probably the best option, just as it will give her a further increase in ability power, which her vines will try to tear through the entire opposing team. Considering we do have the 2 Spellweaver with the Nunu, I think those are probably one of the best items we could have gone for. So we do find the Volibear. Unfortunately, we have no spare gold to buy him. If it was 1 roll sooner, we would have been able to sell the Warwick or the Gragas. Unfortunately, it wasn't, so it's looking like we will probably end up just finishing in 4th place here. Yep, unfortunately, very, very close 4th place. I believe having Volibear there would have made the difference, but I don't believe that selling Nunu would have been the right call, as he was so survivable and did so much damage. So unfortunately, we were very close to the game state of taking a potential 3rd, but we're still happy to place top 4, as it's a great way to start off the night. I know it was only after the first game of the night, but I think I'm going to take a quick break, get up, take a bit of a stretch, and I'll see you all back here in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good break. Hope you're able to get up, get some water, stretch, go to the bathroom. And we're right back to it. Now, I know that we went for set and we went for a Draconic focused brawler build, but there is a build that's been gaining traction lately. It's going to be really interesting to try. And specifically, it's for Brawler Frontline with Carry Riven. Now, we know that at the beginning of the game for TFT Reckoning, Riven was thought to be the worst 3-cost champion. Since then, she's gotten some much needed love in form of buffs, between reducing her cast time on her spell, increasing her attack damage ratio, and most recently, they've even further increased her attack damage ratio at 3 stars, making her a viable level 7 or level 8 reroll carry for 3 stars. So as we look to get into the game here, we're very hopeful to grab something like a sword. Unfortunately, that got taken, so we're going to grab the magic resistance because this composition mixes a couple of my favorite units. It uses brawlers as a frontline, along with abominations, and has Riven mixed in for their attack damage threat carry, as opposed to a Draconic brawler build with set. So unfortunately not tonight. I have to say, Hellions are in a bit of a weak spot. The reason being is because they're very powerful if you get 5 Hellions in the early to mid game, but as the game goes later, you need to sell them and completely transition while only really keeping Teemo as the core of the composition. So to me, I don't even know if they're strong enough. So for now, I'd say this is probably the strongest way we could run our composition. And in the event that we don't end up finding Riven, we don't end up finding our brawler start, we could always just look to go something like skirmishers. We could look to just stick with the Hellions if we find more. But they're usually the de facto win a few rounds in the early game and sell them off as you pivot. So we'll have to see if we end up finding the units that we're really looking for here. What I will do, however, is I will level up here just so I can put in 3 Hellion, as we know how strong they are in the early game. I know it's not quite the same for you as having Hellion throughout the game, but I do think that you'll hopefully enjoy seeing some Hellion action right now in the early game. Going into the carousel, our priorities are a bow, followed by a crit glove, followed by a sword. Just to have them listed. I'm also keeping my eyes peeled for any of the units that we'd be looking for our composition. Namely, Abominations. I guess we'll take the Warwick, as we would be looking for some Brawlers. That Warwick would eventually get replaced by Volibear, but in the meantime, we would use Warwick. We already have the Callista, as she'd be our second Legionnaire. But it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle if we don't find any Brawlers soon, as those would have been a great early game frontline for our composition. Alright, so first priority, bow. Second priority, crit glove. Third priority, sword. So we grab the bow, even though it's going to combine on the poppy. We're okay with that because that gives us a 2-star. And also, it means that we can start using poppy as an item holder that will sell when we start pivoting towards this Riven composition. I do want to try to see how powerful it is if we force it. So bear with me as we may, as I like to say, turbo int to 8th place.
100%. That's everything, right?
We'll just have to see what happens. I do believe the composition is best to work towards level 7 and then level 8, but I believe level 7's where we'll be slow rolling to at least get a 2-star Riven. So in the meantime, I can just start stacking Poppy with some damage items. In the hopes that we can break our loss streak here, or if not, we only lose by a small amount. Thankfully, the absolute Zerg rush that is the Hellion portal leads us to a close victory. Since we're not looking to stay in Hellions, what I will end up doing is just selling off the spare Hellions here. The only one I might keep if we lose is Kennen, just because that could give us another 2-star unit on the board. Looks like this person's going for a similar build, but they're going for the one-shot set build. They don't seem to have any Draconics though, so they could be looking to go for the same Riven build that we are. We'll have to see as the game goes on. I do think we're looking very good for items. The 2 items we're still looking for, ideally, would be a crit glove as well as a another sword. As we say, we'll just try to will that into existence here by calling out the 2 exactly that we need. Perfect, so we managed to land the sword, now all we need is a crit glove. Not quite what we're looking for, but we'll definitely take the increase in gold. Perfect, so we hit the Callista, we do hit a Riven, and I think we transition to the Riven now. I'm not exactly sure what our best board state would be. I do think we sell both of those cannons, and what we can look to do is we can look to buy the Callista. I would say to buy the Yasuo, but I don't think we really have a need to go for Legionnaires. Yeah, the Callista 2, coupled with another Legionnaire, is enough without items that she's just putting out damage as her own threat. All we're really looking for now would be a crit glove. And we are feeling really, really confident about our chances in this game. Perfect. So we get the crit glove. We also end up finding a Lulu, which, funny enough, is going to end up being a unit that we need. I'm also going to do a little bit of rolling down at this level just to hope to find a Gragas, because without him, the Brawlers are going to be a little difficult to find. I do think in the immediate we swap out the Zyra. And we could even swap out the Ziggs. Perfect. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the positioning right to get Warwick in over the spare Rel. In fact, I think putting Warwick in over Lulu probably would have been the right call here. But we do have more of our team. Now that we've hit some of our front line here, we're definitely looking to get to 2 Brawler with the Abominations on the next round. Because if we're able to find a Nunu and a Brand, then we can look to replace Rel and Warwick. And seeing as this person's got Brawler Draconics, it may be difficult to find the Brawler units we're looking for, but we'll have to keep trying. I think we win this, but it's going to be very close. Yep. So we do come away with the win here. We feel good about it. Going into Carousel, knowing we have perfect items for Riven, we want to start looking for items for some of our other units. And I think that Mordekaiser with armor is exactly what we'd want. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get it, but we'll see. Perfect. So we do end up with the Mordekaiser with armor. Having the Bramble Vest on one of our frontline units, specifically against some of our opponents, like the person who's going for this one-shot set, sorry, the 2 people who are going for one-shot set, we want to definitely have that Bramble Vest. So I'll make it now. I'm not exactly sure who the best unit to put it on would be. I think ideally it would be someone like Nunu. But because we don't have Nunu for now, I'm just going to put it on Rel. I'm also going to look to level and do a roll. On that roll, we find our Nunu that we're very happy about. But unfortunately, I was going to say we still don't have our Brand. In the end, we did end up finding a set, which means we can do our 4 Brawler frontline, which will really help us out in terms of our damage, in terms of our frontline survivability. But unfortunately, we were just too late finding him and weren't able to put him in over Lulu in time. The units that we would love to have as the remainder of our composition would be Lulu and Ryze, Ryze taking the place of our 3rd Abomination unit, and Lulu being a Mystic. With that being said, I don't exactly know how to place our composition. I might think something like this. Just so Riven doesn't get focused in the front line, she has the option to walk around and start attacking. Ideal items for Riven would have been a Shadow Rapid Fire, or sorry, a Shadow Runons, a regular Rapid Fire Cannon, and an Infinity Edge. But considering the items that we got, the Shadow tier worked out perfectly along with the set of swords that we got. So we did get the optional, but also considered amazing items for Riven. Unfortunately, however, our positioning still seems off in comparison to the lobby. I may need to move Riven to the other side, as she's just getting focused very, very hard from our opponents, and it's really putting us in a difficult position. Thankfully, we have at least a Gragas and at least a Volibear, so we can look to go to level 7, but the lack of the Abomination is also really hurting us here. Finding that brand is really, really good for us, because I don't think we're going for a 3-star Callista, especially considering we want to get to level 7 at least to start finding our Rivens. So I believe what we're going to do for our play after Wolves is just level up to level 7, take a couple rounds to save some money. We need to find the 2-star Riven. Thankfully the game gave us one for free. And we'll go from there. Even with the Abomination, the reason why I did a few rolls there was because I don't think we're strong enough without the Riven. I also think if we found the Riven, we could have sold this spare Callista. I'm not sure what I want to do with these last items. I do want to make the Sunfire, so I will go ahead and make it on the Nunu, just seeing that he should be one of our units that should stay alive the longest in our composition. So this opponent is playing a Cavalier frontline with what's looking to be a 4-ranger backline, and we should be able to handle this, but it will end up being a close game for us for now because Riven's not yet 2 stars. Once she gets 2-starred, she'll have much more survivability, and her spell will give her increased damage, which, coupled with the Shadow Hand of Justice, also known as Hand of Vengeance, will give her a bunch more healing to be able to stay alive for longer. In terms of how we want to set up our composition, we're probably looking for a 3rd item for Nunu. I think the perfect 3rd item, if we could go for one, would be a Gunblade. So I'm going to grab the ability power, knowing that if we end up getting... If we end up getting a sword, then we're really happy with this Nunu's bite damage and sustain. Finding the 2-star Riven's kind of huge for us here, just because it should keep us in a pretty safe position for a good amount of time. Considering how many other units we're looking for here, I'm not sure if we'd want to look to go to level 8 or stay at level 7 and get to 50 gold, as we have a 35% chance to find a Riven here. I do believe getting to level 8 would be more powerful, just to find a Rise to get a 2nd Mystic to really increase our magic resistance, which against this lobby especially is looking like it'll be very, very important to have. And from there, what we can look to do is look to 3-star Riven at level 8. Normally, Riven would be positioned right back here in terms of defensive positioning, considering she'd have a rapid fire. But since she doesn't, I may consider putting her on her lonesome on the far side. I'm not sure if that's a death sentence, depending on positioning, but we'll have to see. Yeah, considering she has the increase in damage for herself, I did think that she'd be able to survive for a reasonably long time. And my assumption was right. It ended up working out for us, coming out with a win, and putting us in a better health position going into the carousel here. I believe we're going to be first pick out, and yes we are. So hopefully we're able to grab this sword that's going right by us on Diana. Perfect, we're able to get a gunblade for our Nunu. From here, in order to power up our composition, I may end up staying at level 7 just for a couple of rolls to try to find a 2-star set, a 2-star Nunu, potentially finding ourselves a few more Rivens, and maybe even a rise over our current brand. So I'm not going to roll on this round just because we're currently sitting at 50 gold. That's what we want to be at. And I'll take a few rounds after this with our spare money over 50 gold to be able to roll. Now that our Nunu's fully itemized, I am interested to see his damage and survivability, so I'm going to leave the graph open and see what kind of numbers we put out. Yeah, as you can see, Nunu didn't exactly do much in terms of damage, but he was able to stay alive for quite a long period of time, which realistically is all we need him to do. So we find ourselves a Brand, a nice pickup. We find ourselves another Gragas, nice pickup. Considering we want to make sure we keep our 2 Dawnbringer synergy, getting a 2-star Gragas is fairly, I would say, necessary to our composition. The unit I don't think is necessary to go for a 3-star is Callista. Currently she hasn't been hurting our economy, but that could look to change this round. We'll have to see what's going on here. The other benefit in terms of the items that we have on our Riven is that she's not actually dealing critical damage, she's just dealing an extreme amount of damage thanks to Deathblade, coupled with her spell giving her doubled physical damage. So we're not looking for the 3-star Brand. We're not looking for a 3-star Lulu. We're definitely not looking for more brands just because we know that we want to have a rise instead. The only unfortunate part about stacking all of our spare items onto Nunu here is that the Abomination's not actually going to get many items. But what we can look to do is put the spare tier on Brand, who will become Rise, and then the Abomination has a bit more mana before he gets his first cast. So there we get lucky, we end up finding a Rise on our first and probably one of our only rolls, which this is how our composition is going to look. Our only difference, swapping out Warwick for Volibear. At this point, we're feeling pretty good. All we're missing is a Callista for 3 stars, a Gragas for 2 stars, and we'll spend the rest of our money rolling at level 8 to try and find ourselves additional Rivens. Unfortunately, because of their Heimerdinger, I do think we lose this, but it's going to be really close. Wow. By 6 health, our 1-star Gragas pulled through for the win. Wonderful. Wow. So we went from having no rise to finding a very quick 2-star rise, which will power up our Abomination. The biggest things we're looking for at this point are 2 more Nunus, 2 more sets, another Gragas, and of course, as many Rivens as we can find. So, not tonight. I want to get your feel of things. I know you wanted Hellions. The best we've got is Lulu in the composition. Are you still enjoying the stream regardless? Oh good, I'm glad. Unfortunately, we take a bit of a hard loss there just because we're not able to break through their front line of knights. But that's solvable hopefully soon, as we do end up finding ourselves the Volibear that we couldn't find last game, and in a decent time this game. Of course, I always want to try to check in. It's just, unfortunately, sometimes I get so deep in the game and trying to make sure we plan ahead properly that that I don't get around to checking all that often. But there's always an attempt. I want to take care of my community. I do believe this is going to be another close loss, unfortunately, just because of Aphelios, coupled with Kindred, but we'll have to see. Yep, another close loss. Hopefully we're able to find an item for Callista or Rise, ideally Callista, knowing that we're going to be looking to finish her off as a 3-star. I don't particularly want the Cavalier spat, but the chance at a 2-star Volibear is really good here, and it denies our opponent the Cavalier Spatula, where I do know that there was one of them that was doing reroll Cavaliers, this player. If they were to have gotten a Cavalier Spatula, that would have been one of the strongest options for them. Just unfortunate that we're looking for so much right now. We'll just have to keep waiting and hope that we can hit some of these crazy pairs that we've got going at this point. Unfortunately, with our positioning of Riven against the set, I do think we lose this. I don't think it's close. Which means that we're going to be at one more loss before we get knocked out. And considering this person's sitting in currently 4th place, it's looking like we may end up in an 8th place finish this game, just by nature of such an aggressive lobby. Thankfully, we did hit a couple of big pickups in being able to power up our Callista to 3 stars, so she gets a lot more damage, and hopefully a damage item on the dragon. As well as cleaning up a bunch of bench space and getting ourselves a 2-star Gragas. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put Riven in the quote-unquote safe position that we're looking to have her. I'm not sure if this is going to pan out as well as I would have hoped, but we'll have to see. Yeah, clearly it did not pan out well, and we are definitely ending in 7th place this game. Unfortunately, that's the hardest loss we've had in a while, and it takes us from 47 LP all the way down to 3. Fortunately, we're not at 0, but as you can see, these games in Diamond, they don't mess around. I think with a bit more experience on the composition, maybe a bit better knowledge on positioning Riven, I think we could have done a fair bit better that game. I also think getting an item that wasn't that Cavalier spatula for Volibear would have been a lot better on that carousel, as a 3-starred Callista in the corner, if she had a physical damage item, would have done so much damage throwing a spear across the board, and it could have really made a difference in 1, our Abomination's 3rd item, and 2, being able to survive long enough. With that, I think we're on to our last game of the night. Unfortunately, there was such a fast load time that we were not able to change screens quite in time. But as we look to go into this game, I'm not too sure we want to end up playing on the last game of the night. It's possible with these items we could look to play something like Assassins. We could also look to do something more physical damage oriented, like a Draven. But for now, we'll have to see what ends up happening. Since we're looking to take an early loss here to start working on our economy, I may end up just leaving my board as is and potentially selling this LeBlanc. But considering I'm looking to go for assassins, what I may end up doing instead is just buying this set, and on next round, if I end up finding a Kha'Zix, I can run 2 assassin with 2 brawler frontline, which could look to be a pretty good frontline for now. I also have the option that I could end up finding the Coven build, which means we would have Coven units to work with, plus the option of a going assassins. Unfortunately, without finding that, I think our strongest play is just to throw in Varus for redeemed and start putting items on him. Don't mind the Stark jump and background music, but it's a little bit too hypey for me right now, especially with this point in the game. So I'm just going to look to skip ahead. I'm not really sure what I want to do with this game. My items scream that I'm definitely fine for damage. If I end up getting ability power, I could go potentially any build. If I get a tier, it also lets me have a very strong physical damage carry option across multiple units. Part of me does want to try again from last game's build though, so I do want to look to get a bow and see if I could do something with Riven, since I already have 3 brawlers on my bench. I'm not sure what my strongest board state currently would be. I do think that it could be worth it to take out the redeemed and throw in Ashe as another ranger for now, just so Varus can put out more damage from the backline. So I'll pick her up. Realistically speaking, we're not going to be keeping this Varus for too long though.
But I can't
Yeah, this feels like a much better setup for now. At least for level 5. So it looks like our opponent's going to be going Forgotten this game. At least one of our opponents is looking to go Forgotten this game with Brawlers frontline. And itemizing Hecarim as a frontline tank. And Katarina as their backline carry. So we're a little concerned about that, but we'll have to see what happens. I'm not too sure what's going on with my composition at the moment. I really don't think I'll be going those units in terms of my carries. I also know I don't have any tiers, so I don't feel confident picking up this Karma. Let's turn to the audience here. Not tonight, what do you think I should try to go in terms of a build? So as far as redeemed, I was missing quite a few. I had sold the Leona earlier. I didn't have Aatrox as an interim. Redeemed carry would have ended up being something like... I could have gone for a Varus carry, but with the items I have, I don't really think Varus would have been the best choice. Considering I had so many Brawlers already, I figured that Brawlers was probably a strong enough frontline. My only concern right now was I was going to say, I don't have a Callista. Thankfully, I found her. Which means that I can actually run something like this for now, where I don't particularly love how the composition is sitting. But I am really happy I found the Riven. I don't think a 1-star Riven with only half of her items is strong enough to put in right now. So we'll have to see. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it over 30 gold, but I do still think my 4 brawler frontline is strong enough. I just think, unfortunately, my items aren't in play, which is putting me in a bit of a weaker position. On the carousel here, we definitely want a bow. Unfortunately, we've moved all the way up to 3rd place, so it's very unlikely that we're able to get it. Yeah, just like that. Because of that, the next item we'd be looking for is magic resist. Once again, might be a little hard to grab, but probably a bit more likely. Perfect. So now that we've got the magic resistance, we have 2 fairly good items on for our Riven. Only problem is, we either need to find an item that she can use for healing, like a bloodthirster, or we would really love to find a rapid fire cannon. Something like this. So we'd want to find magic resistance for a bloodthirster, or 2 bows for a rapid fire cannon would be what I would personally prefer to see here. But we'll have to see. Once again, the person in 1st place we're really worried about, because they've gone for Cavalier reroll with a Carry Hecarim, and they're looking to run Cavalier Abominations. Now, I've done this composition the other night. It gets scary. The fact they managed to get a 3-star Hecarim already means they should continue their 100 streak for a long time. Unfortunately, we do take a loss here, just because our opponent has a full set of Abomination items ready, where we don't really have any. And what we're going to look to do here is on stage 4-1, we need to go to level 7 and put in Riven. I do think in the meantime that we could have a bit of a stronger board by putting Riven in now. I'm just not sure what the last unit we would put in is. So I guess for now, we just leave it as is with 3 brawlers and see how we're feeling about the composition. Just unfortunate that we're not really able to find much of what we're looking for, and we versed the Mr. 100 player after he's power spiked. Yeah, we're not going to stand a chance against this Hecarim. We'd be happy with taking out even a single unit here. And thankfully we do end up barely getting rid of his Sejuani to save us a little bit of health. But we're still looking pretty rough here. Finding another Riven really helps us. What we need most of all, though, I would say, is to get to level 7. Because once we get to level 7, we can spend our gold over level 50 to just start slow rolling for Riven, slow rolling to level up our Nunu, our Callista, even our Brand. Please be golden, Nico. Okay, 9 gold. Pretty good. So we find ourselves in a pretty solid position after having gotten a large amount of gold. That's kind of hilarious. Since we do have a Thieves' Gloves on our Gragas, he could prove pretty well to be a frontline unit for us. I'm also just going to throw the Warmogs on Nunu, as that will give him some much needed health, as well as giving our Abomination a bunch of extra health and survivability. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find an extra Riven with our rolls, so we're going to be looking a fair bit weaker than we'd like to be here. Although, Riven is slowly but steadily chipping away at our opponent's units. So we come out with a win, which we're always happy to see. But yeah, the person who's currently at 100 and will probably win the game has some extremely survivable units. If they end up getting a Cavalier Spatula, let's just say our game is over. And speaking of our game being over, we're in a rough spot. I say that because there are no bows here. We could have gotten a bow and got lucky with another bow. Because of that, I think we just take the magic resistance and we settle for putting a Risk Thirster on our Riven here. I do also think that rolling there was very powerful, as there were so many things we could find with an extra Callista, an extra Brand, a couple Nunus, an extra Riven would be a major pickup for damage and survivability of our composition. So I do think it was the right play. Unfortunately for us, however, I do think we lose this just because the set has 2 items and is looking fairly well itemized. We'll have to see though, because Riven is starting to come online, where even at 1 star, she's actually putting out a surprising amount of damage, because the damage bonus that she's getting from using her ability is putting her fairly solidly into carry position, and the fact that this Runon's Untamed Hurricane lets her damage 3 units at a time is letting us survive with even a 1-star Riven being our main damage carry. Oh, thank goodness. Finding that Riven there was the dream. Because with 1 star, we were able to do almost 6,300 damage. Now with 2 stars and extremely survivable items, unless she gets bursted, which is definitely possible, we'll be feeling pretty good about our chances of Riven surviving and putting out damage to the opposing team. Yeah, so as you can see here by the crit numbers going across, she's actually damaging the majority of the enemy team at once. And in a much shorter fight, she put out 6,000 damage still. So we are very happy to see that 2-star Riven. Also, considering at level 8, all we would do is add in Mystic by swapping out Rise from Brand, we're happy to stay at level 7 and slow roll our spare gold, now that we have a 2-star Riven, to try to find a 3-star. I'm not exactly sure what item we'd want to take here on the carousel. I do think I do think we're going to want a defensive item, probably an armor. Now that that's gone and we can't get the Volibear with armor, we're happy to take whatever's left, potentially the Shadow Magic Resistance on Brand. I'm actually very surprised the person at 100 health lost. I'm not sure what they lost to, but this gives us not only an item on Brand, which is never bad, but also the ability to potentially have a Revenant emblem when we have Volibear for Warwick, or an Ionic Darkspark to give Brand the ability to start dealing damage. But whatever we end up getting will be good because it will go on to our Abomination. And as I said, from here, we're just going to be looking to roll our spare gold, looking to find specifically another Nunu, and start looking for Rivens. In the event we find that we've stabilized and we're actually winning more matches, I may consider putting us to level 8 soon, just because we can have a higher chance on our rolls to find a Volibear, which will be stronger than our Warwick. Unfortunately, with yet another fully itemized Abomination, I do think we lose this, but it's going to be a close loss by about just the Abomination. Which means we only take the player damage, which is the best loss we could have had. Okay, so we get lucky and we find ourselves a Rise. What that means is I can take this magic resistance and I can either put it onto a different unit, or I could just look to put it onto someone like Callista. Because now that it's on Callista, even a sword or a bow would be good items to try to find potentially. It's also unfortunate we're not finding any Rivens, but kind of hilarious that we are managing to find sets and so many Graguses. Now, our Riven's stuck on Hecarim, which means that she will end up dying and we will lose the round here. But it was expected, as I've said, that we will be losing to this person and their extreme Cavalier composition. Cavalier are definitely looking like the build to beat as part of the new patch. I'm going to start putting some points into levels here because we do want to end the game at level 8, especially now that we found Arise. So with that, I'm going to end up moving our units around and start doing some work towards leveling, especially considering we haven't found any Rivens beyond enough to get her to 2 stars. So I need to make sure that we don't start just completely hemorrhaging our health here. Finding a Gunblade is great. We can look to potentially put that on. Okay. We could potentially look to put this Gunblade on someone like Nunu. I'm not exactly sure if it would be good on anyone else. I don't think it would be good on Rise. So once again, let's try to turn Nunu into a frontline tank for us and position our items something like this. The reason why I ended up doing a bit of rolling there is because I realized that Gragas' chances will go from slim to none. Actually, well, I guess they'd be from low to slim. But semantics aside, it's going to be really hard to find a Gragas if we don't find it soon. Unfortunately, that Abomination's build is just so that he ends up dealing a large amount of damage to multiple units, and we barely end up losing there. Wonderful. We now have an extremely tanky, very high damage reduction frontline unit with Thieves' Gloves, so he'll permanently have at least an extra item. From here, we're not too worried about getting a 3-star set, as all it does for us is increases his armor shred slightly, so we just want to look to get to level 8. Once again, we're going to take a bit of a loss here because our Riven got crowd controlled as Jax ended up focusing her first, meaning that we take a bit of a harsher loss. Thankfully, with the extra gold we put into levels earlier, we're at the point that we can go to level 8 here and do a full roll down, hoping to find some upgrades. I am genuinely surprised. I am genuinely surprised we found no upgrades, I was about to say, as we end up finding 3 Lulus in the shop, which would have been much better than this Lux. We're very hopeful we can pick up a win here, but as we can see, our opponent is going a 3-star Riven, and she does have items that are better than ours, considering the 3-star gives such a damage increase. So, unfortunately, we take yet another round loss, and going into Carousel, we may end up in a 6th place finish. There's not really a ton of options for what we want to take here. I mean, I think we end up taking a Bramble Vest just for the sake of having it for damage reduction, for physical damage. Realistically speaking, I don't think anything was great here. We sold our spare sets since we didn't believe that going for a 3-star set would have been the right play here. But I think putting the Bramble Vest on our Rise to give us the possibility of our Abomination with 3 defensive items is pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking to change our positioning so that Riven can be defended by a unit or 2. And from there, I want to try to see if we can open her up to start dealing more damage without just getting caught and dying. So we know we're going to take a loss here. I don't believe it'll be enough to knock us out. Thankfully, we ended up killing the Sejuani, so we live with 5 health, but we have 0 losses to spare, and quite unfortunately, that we have an opponent that did end up getting a 3-star Riven, and that's the reason why we haven't had any luck finding these Rivens so far. All we really need is one more win. I don't think we'll find it, unfortunately, as this person has the one-punch set build that we so very much enjoy running. I do think, depending on who set focuses, we have a chance, but unfortunately, because he focused Riven, we're going to end up losing in 5th place. Slightly unfortunate way to end the night, but with all things being said, it does give me confidence that the Riven build can work if we end up naturally finding it. We tried to learn a new comp tonight. At the end of the day, we're not exactly happy with how it turned out because we took a hard 7th place loss that really set behind our slow but steady climb we had through Diamond. Fortunately, however, we are just getting started with the season, all things considered. New builds are being discovered, compositions are being nerfed, changed, new items will be added. We have so much time left in the season that I think we'll be totally fine on our road to Masters. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a great night, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. See you Sunday. Take care.